because the fans are getting younger and the cars are getting older, and they don't remember seeing Chevelles on the street or Camaros or even Monte Carlos.
Well, that's a valid point. That's a valid point, but what do you do to keep the two classes separated, grow one class, keep one where it's an entry level like we have with the Iron Giant, the street stocks as we know them? How do you keep that around and still grow the sport with a new division like the IMCA stock cars and keep them different to the point where you got to move up or down?
Honestly, I think Terry's doing it right for this year. Make it so that they can switch back and forth, and run both classes. If I were in his place, I would be doing the same thing, because if there's only 4 IMCA stock cars, it's not going to make for a very interesting race, but it's also not going to make the racers very happy that
Right.
they're only getting a race against 4 cars. So if they can go over and run with the street stocks, that's great, And I understand why he did it, and I would have probably done the same thing had it been presented earlier. I know that a lot of my friends, my family's from St. Louis. I've got a lot of racing friends in the St. Louis area, and talking to them, a lot of them they'll have 2 complete motors. They call them their claimer motor and their open motor, and when it's an open show, they put the open motor in, and when it's a claimer show, they put the claimer motor in, and they run them both, both motors in the same car. It's a different car based on what motor it's got in it. So I really don't know the best answer. I really do kind of hope that the IMCA stock cars take off, but by the same token, I hope it doesn't kill the street stocks in the process.
And that's where you got to find that fine balance and keeping rules different enough to where a guy can keep it cheap and still race in the street stocks, or if he wants to step up and get more into a little more advanced race car, you go to the IMCA stock car class, and in a sense, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. It is true. And the street stocks are have always traditionally been more of a home-built car. It was more ingenuity. It was more your craftsmanship, your ability to put a car together, where the IMCA stock cars are going to probably, especially in the beginning, be more of a chassis-built car, a factory-built chassis car.
Right.
There'll be some that come out there that qualify, and they're going to take a look at that class, and they're going to say, well, there's not very many drivers out there. I can be competitive in that class. And they may already have a home-built car. I'm not picking on Dakota, but let's take Dakota, for example, and his car. His car technically would qualify under the rules if he changed his motor. And so if, let's say, he decided he wanted to go that route and change his motor and make the changes necessary to become an IMCA stock car, well, he might be the first guy out there with a home-built IMCA stock car. But I'm not sure how competitive you're going to be. It matters even more. Your suspension matters even more when you've got less motor.
Absolutely, it does.
The smaller your motor, the better the car better handle.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to be flat-footing it around the track.
Sure.
Which is part of what makes for that exciting racing is, that those guys are flat-footing. And the first year of the Classics, I ran an absolute flat-top cast piston, cast crank, 194 truck head motor with a big hydraulic cam. I didn't even have a solid lifter cam. I set the track record that year, and I was running flat-foot all the way around the track. My foot was on the floor most of the time. And, yeah, I got outrun in the straightaways, but I did really good in corners, and it made for good racing.
That's half the race right there.
That's what you're going to see. Yeah, and I think you're going to find that the IMCA stock cars are going to be real close to that. They're going to be real close to being able to run mostly flat-footed.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
To see what happens and how this plays out with the two classes racing each other.
I totally agree, and I look forward to seeing what's going to happen. I just But looking forward to racing in general. In fact, I'm thinking about going and running the Grove this weekend. I don't know. I still have the mud on my car from the Iron Giant. But I'm thinking about it.
Right on. Well,
change the oil.
If you choose to do that, we want to wish you the best of luck, and maybe we'll see you down there, or who knows where we're going to be, or where any four of us are going to be at that time. But I want to say thanks for taking your time and giving us your input and your thoughts, and kind of keeping us updated on what's going on with that whole situation. I know it's kind of a mess right now, but it'll get figured out, and we'll make it work somehow to the best that it can for everybody as we move forward with these two classes.
Something else Jerry might consider doing, and I haven't talked to him about this, so this is not me. This is me making a suggestion for the whole racing community. Is he's running the B mods with the sportsman cars right now. Maybe he runs the IMCA stock cars with the street stocks. They have their own points, their own payout. It's a separate class. They're just run together.
And that might be that might be a good option, to something he might consider.
Yeah, and that's one way to help grow the class and let them get seat time and race time, and let people see what they're all about, and see if it's something that really trips our trigger. One thing I will caution against is we have this tendency to look back east and say, oh, they must be doing it right. But back east is a very big place, and it depends on what part of the country you look at.
Right.
From state to state, it's different. And so what works in Wisconsin doesn't necessarily work in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
So just because it works back there doesn't mean it'll work here.
Well, and that's a fact.
Time will tell.
Exactly. Time will tell, and we'll see what happens. But keep us updated. Don't feel free to call in whenever, if you've got any kind of news on that type of situation for us, and kind of keep everybody updated on what's going on with the Iron Giant and the rules and how all this plays out. Okay.
Absolutely.
And again, go ahead.
Can I make a couple of announcements real quick?
Absolutely.
We got everybody on the. Okay. So I wanted to let everybody know that we have a series sponsor. Checker Flag Asphalt has stepped up, and they're going to be our series sponsor this year. Mohawk Metals is sponsoring the Wallbanger. Trying to think of who else. I didn't have this prepared, so everybody please forgive me. But but we've had some great responses from our sponsors, and I'm going to be putting out some more solid press releases as I get stuff put together. But I wanted to just take a second and thank all of the sponsors who are getting on board, and I'm sure you know that we're putting together a program and T-shirts for the series. And so if we haven't reached out to a sponsor and they're interested in getting a hold of us, to us, only for us to call you. We want to make sure that, we take care of everybody, but it's a lot of phone calls. So
what's the phone number they call to get a hold of you?
The phone number, and this goes for racers that have questions too. In fact, while I was listening to you, I was answering questions for another racer. But it's 971-930-5495.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, James. Thanks for your time. We appreciate you, and we'll see you at the racetrack pretty soon.
All right. We'll see you then.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Some good points in there.
Very good points. It's a racer's perspective on what's happening. And, I agree with a lot of what James said. And, I know part of our pre-show discussions between, the four of us were, is it fair to put these guys in the same class? Have the IMCA stock cars race against the street stocks? One thing that was interesting that that James brought up was that when you don't have the motor, you've got to make your car handle. And you see a lot of that in the type pack racing that you see, on highlight reels on YouTube and on Dirt and Speed Shift and whatnot from the IMCA stock cars. I think the reason it got me thinking, there's a reason why they're all packed together. These cars are super speedway cars. It's just like it's a Daytona car. It's a
you look
Talladega
at the carburetors
car.
they've got to run. They're limited. You don't see one guy take off and leave everybody.
Exactly.
The other point we made while we were, pre-show talking, amongst ourselves is we also agreed you don't have to be the fastest group of cars on the track to put on a great show. We see that with what we're talking about, the IMCA stock cars. Are they fast? Yes. Are they the fastest group of cars? No. Are they faster than the street stocks? Probably not. Horsepower-wise.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Do they put on a fantastic show? Absolutely. And why is that? Because of what you just said.
It's tight door panel racing, which is what short track's all about. Now here's, we started talking about power to weight ratios and things like that. I did a little bit of comparisons on a couple things while we were on the phone with James.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about, we've hit a lot on the motor comparisons. Now comparing apples to apples, the 500 CFM carburetor or carbureted motor rule package for the IMCA stock cars versus the open street stocks right now. If you run a 406, and what I did is compared the cubic inch to the minimum weight. Does that make sense? That would be a fair comparison, don't you think,
okay.
Sam?
Yeah.
So if you run a 500 CFM carburetor engine, your average cubic inch you can have between a Ford block, a Chevy, or a Ford motor, a Chevy motor, and a Mopar. Corey,
I'm listening.
Mopar is Chrysler.
Right.
Dodge, Plymouth, etc.
Mopar.
Exactly.
My old pig ain't running. Go ahead.
Here we go.
There we go. Anyways, if your cubic inch to weight ratio is 8.1. Okay?
Okay.
Pounds to cubes.
Pounds to cubes.
8.1 pounds to 1 cubic inch.
Okay.
In the motor. A street stock with that 3,300 pound weight rule, most of those guys are running 406 motors, 406 GMs.
Most of them.
Most of them.
Okay.
How many cubes or how many pounds per cube, you think?
More than 8.1.
8.12.
See? That's more than 8.1.
But see how closely matched that is?
Very, very, very much so, yes.
I mean, your power, your weight to cube rule, ratios are very similar. Now, you look at the weight rule, 2950 and for the IMC stock car, 3300 or 3100, depending on what motor package you're running for the street stock. The one that gets me is the spoiler rule.
Okay.
IMCA stock cars, no blades.
None.
Zero.
Zip.
Nada.
Zilch.
Don't put it back there. It ain't happening.
Sam's awake. But then, street stocks, open motors, no spoiler.
No spoiler.
Crate cars, 6 inches of fun.
Okay.
Just a few things that, caught my eye. If James touched on it and we talked about it, the safety of going with a sanctioned class.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that we've talked about, unsanctioned classes. Dom and I and you have talked about the Hornets and the Sport Compacts. Tracy Muse brought up some good points or good perspective on that and sanctioning that class. If you look at it, from the safety aspect, the cage construction requirements are very similar to what our open street stock rules are now. So is it going to make it safer? Yes and no. I mean, the only real difference is 0.005 of an inch in wall thickness on tubing. Still 1 3/4 inches. But at the same time, in my opinion, my personal opinion, from the viewpoint of a track promoter, having a sanctioned class with a sanctioned set of rules, in my opinion, would decrease liability if something were to happen versus a home-built set of rules. There's less to play with lawyers if something bad happens. And, we've seen the advancements in some of these car designs by going to a sanctioned class. I mean, look at...
and something that James said...
Go ahead.
Is he says street stock racing as we know it is starting to go by the wayside. And he's right when he says that, in the fact that, yes, those cars are harder to find. When you do find them, they're not making race cars out of them. They're trying to like you said, put it back together for something you had in high school, the restoration projects, which I understand. Now, the IMCA stock car, is that what is going to replace street stock